So welcome to Let's Kill Twitter, Charmian.
Hi, Sajila. Great to be here. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to
All
you
right,
both as well.
let's
And
get
hi,
you both in
Steve.
the Zoom rooms. Well, hello, you're now live with us.
Hi.
Hello, hi.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much. So, how's the new year going? Let's do it in alphabetical order. Steve, you can go first.
Going well. Well, actually, no, it's not going so well. I had to isolate for Christmas, so I know that was the previous year, but that was a tough period. And then just as I came out of isolation, my heating broke in my flat, so I've been in a freezing cold flat for the last week. So it's actually been really terrible. But I'm hoping the rest of the year is gonna pick up. I think I've just got all the bad stuff out of the way really early on. You know,
That's a rough start. Sorry.
it's been rough. It has been rough, and also all my friends went to Jamaica. I was going to Jamaica with my friends, and I failed my fit to fly test because it was during my COVID week. So I had to miss out on my holiday to Jamaica. So I had to sit in my flat on my own while all my friends were on a beach. It's been awful, actually. It's been really. Now I say it out loud, it sounds worse than it is. I'm actually quite happy. But the heating.
Not to rub salt in the wound. I've been to Jamaica during the Christmas period, like during that December period.
Yeah,
It is stunning. It's beautiful.
yeah.
And
I've
yeah,
watched,
just to rub salt in the wound.
I've
But
watched
yeah,
my friends' Instagram stories, and it looks really delightful. It really does look like the best time of their lives. So yeah, it's been tough actually.
but you're here. You're here.
Thanks for making
I mean,
it.
as if I compensate. You're on Let's Kill Twitter.
And
So
you know what,
more could
guys?
you
I
want?
was due to still be in Jamaica until tomorrow, and so I wouldn't have been able to do this. So in many ways,
Exactly.
it has
Even
worked out.
with the the kind of modern technology of Zoom, how could you? You could have made us jealous, being sitting on the beach and zooming from there.
That's true.
And what
Yeah.
about you, Charmian? What's it been like for you, the holiday period? Have you got
Um,
anything to report?
It's been quite nice. We had a quiet Christmas, and I've just started to get back into my stride. Did my first gig of the year last night. Was surprised pleasantly at how full it was, and I thought there was great spirit of optimism. Cheered me up no end. But I've definitely got to get more fresh air. I've decided, and say yes to everything. Every opportunity. By opportunity, I mean, do I want to go to Sainsbury's? Yes.
Other supermarkets are available. Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
please.
like
Yes,
Lidl.
yes, yeah.
It's, there is a kind of, somebody told me this, I can't get out of the house. I need brightness. So I was like in hog heaven today because it was such a nice day. It's really hard to sort of get out of the house. But apparently the thing is, no matter how bad it is, you're supposed to go out for a walk every day, aren't you, essentially? I just find it really hard to motivate myself.
You need have you got a dog, Julian?
No, but you're right. That would keep me on my toes.
Yeah, absolutely. We adopted one last July, and we have to go out.
Oh, well, you see, I spend too much time reading Twitter, so I want to ask both of you, this is sort of our opening gambit question before we tuck into your selection, is how you would characterise your sort of your liking or otherwise of Twitter and your sort of usage of Twitter. Steve, why don't we start with you?
Well, I've been an avid user of Twitter for maybe 12 years, I think. But actually, unfortunately for this podcast, about 4 months ago, I deleted Twitter off my phone. And it's made me very happy. Like, not having it on my phone has improved my life immeasurably because I don't just scroll through it and feel... Because basically what I would do is, maybe you do as well, I scroll through Twitter until I see something that makes me angry or sad. And then I get off Twitter, and then I'd go about my life. And then what I would do is I would not think about it and go back onto Twitter. And then I would continue to scroll until I found something that, again, made me angry or sad. So now I don't have it on my phone. I can't do that. Now what I do is I have to log onto the browser and enter twitter.com and go on it that way, which
Wow.
I still go on it. But the effort that requires just means that I go on it a little bit less. So I still see stuff, but I'm not doing the kind of mindless scrolling, which is honestly, I would recommend it to anyone. It's been brilliant. Having said that, I've used a lot of Instagram since. So, it's difficult to know whether I've actually improved.
What are you posting on Instagram? Because it's all photos, obviously. What photos are you?
Yeah, I do a lot of photos. I just
Oh.
post photos. It's all thirst traps of me just looking as good as I possibly can, hoping to get as many likes and comments as I can. That's That's what
So
I do. It's
literally
not funny.
self-promotion,
It's just,
yeah?
It's just nice looking stuff. Yeah, no, it's still self-promotion. Yeah, no, I don't post that much. My story, I do Instagram stories and stuff, which can be quite funny. But generally, I find it a more positive place than Twitter. Having said that, there are some absolutely brilliant things on Twitter that make me laugh harder than anything on Instagram. You know, so Twitter's got the potential to be perfect and brilliant, but there are just a few things on there that drag it down. And I think on
And who
balance,
are these? Name and fame. Like,
Name
if they're
and
good
fame.
people, let's fame them. Yeah.
we know who they are. We know
Well,
the
we
people.
don't
Well, the
necessarily
good ones. The good ones, you said.
Oh, the good ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, well, my favorite account on Twitter is an account called, I forget what the handle is, but basically it's a guy who puts Paddington Bear into famous film scenes.
Is it Paddington
Oh.
out? Did he call it Paddington out of context or something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just every day tweets another film scene and he puts Paddington Bear in it. And honestly, it's the best thing on my timeline. It's brilliant.
I love that. That's the kind of stuff that.
Yeah, it'd be like Paddington Bear on the little boat on the door floating outside the Titanic, and Jack would be there. And it's just like it's a funny thing. It's watching
That
a
is
bear
funny.
be
I
next
like
to that. That's funny stuff.
I like that. And I guess the same question to Charmian.
Well, I think I'm a bit of a Twitter innocent, and I'm trying to, play a modern tennis game with a wooden racket, and I'm quite confounded by Twitter in a way. I mean, I love reading it and following stuff, but I don't have much of a structure. And when I do engage, I think that I'm kind of overthinking it. I'm a bit long-winded, and I'm not doing Twitter speak. I kind of write like I'd normally write, so I only get half a sentence out.
Have you got a favourite, count that you follow?
Well, there's somebody who takes pictures of Glastonbury tour, called Michelle, and I like looking at her pictures. But basically, I follow stuff that just comes up, and I'm in a permanent state of horror. With the literalness, the way everybody takes things literally, and lack of critical thinking. So maybe I'm too judgy and grudgy to be engaging.
You're in the right place then.
Way.
If you're judgy, Twitter is exactly the right place. But well, actually, with that said, it's probably right to kind of go into our first judgy type.
Yeah,
tweets.
let's do it. I mean, I don't know where to start, actually. Let's have a look. Hang on. Here we go, in the liked tweets thing. So, I wonder, let's have a look, whether we shouldn't start with... I mean, the biggest selection of tweets that we've got today are, well, quite a lot on the Colston verdict. Do we want to... Yeah, maybe we should start there. It's a pretty meaty one to have at the top of the show. So there's a lot, and there's actually quite a lot of tweets to get through on this. So let's have a look. There's a few. Let's just check that I've not. Well, I mean, I've picked up. I've picked up a few that are from not left field, more right field as well. So this is from Christian Niemitz, who's head of the political economy at the IEA, which is the right-wing think tank, and he's quote tweeted a piece from the Guardian here, and he's saying the four defendants. So the quote is: the four defendants did not contest their actions, but sought to argue they were justified because the statue was so offensive it constituted an indecent display or hate crime. And his sort of take on that is fashionable opinion privilege is real. So obviously we want to get to grips with the whole issue of the fact that this did happen. They didn't deny that they pulled the statue off and there was criminal damage, but there was obviously a case around it. Now, so Julie, you've picked up an exchange, as did Charmian with Suella Braverman here. So let's just see. Well, let's just use, and actually with Femi as well. So Suella Braverman, who I've forgotten the actual title. She's the Attorney General, isn't she? That's right. I sometimes find that hard to believe. Now, the deal here is, of course, that because of the jury's verdict, is the government are now looking at whether or not there needs to be some review. So she's saying trial by jury is an important guardian of liberty and must not be undermined. However, the decision in the Colston case is causing confusion, and she goes on to say, without affecting the result of this case, as Attorney General, I am able to refer matters to the Court of Appeal so that senior judges have the opportunity to clarify the law for future cases. I'm carefully considering whether to do so, because there are so many of these tweets. I'm just gonna, if it's okay, just read everything out so we can get into the discussion ASAP. So we've got two interesting comments on here. Secret Barrister, very obviously a famous account really in terms of all legal matters. He's tweeted, she's tweeted, I should say, it is causing confusion because your colleagues are knowingly spreading misinformation about this case to fuel your desired culture war. And here are the facts of the case if you're struggling to understand them, Attorney General. And then let's get to Femi's tweet, which is one that Sajeela, you picked out as well, and which kind of gets to the nub of all this in terms of the political sense. So you had two legal choices here, Suella. Treat statues that publicly celebrate racist mass murders as the problem, or treat people who oppose statues that publicly celebrate racist mass murderers as the problem. You're an utter disgrace. So Sajeela and Charmian, you both picked out the tweets on here. And I don't know if there are just two more on this that I'm hoping to pick out as well, which are nearby. We've got so many in the likes column this week. This from let's have a look. Where's he gone? Oh yeah, right. So Mark Davenant, photographer, was picking out this piece, which I think that's from the Sun, that bit. So he's talking about what Suella Braverman's just said. We've now reached the point where the people are the enemies of the people, and he's making reference to all the how the judges were termed the enemies of the people during the whole Brexit crisis as well. But I mean, he got a reply to that, and again, this sets out the other side. He got a reply to that from Dave Osborne, which is, it was an acquittal that gives carte blanche to anyone to destroy anything that represents something they don't agree with. The reason for it is irrelevant. It was still criminal damage, and the jury got it wrong. So here's where I shut up, and you guys get stuck in.
Like, I think okay. So Charmian, do you want to kick? Because I've got strong feelings on that, and I don't know if Steve did have any tweets on this, but let's start with Charmian.
Well, juries have the right to get things wrong, and I'm quite shocked the Attorney General should step in this way. And there've been so many cases where a jury has behaved in a contrary way. When the spy George Blake was liberated by 4 Quakers, however long ago it was nobody knew who'd done it for quite a few years, and then they admitted it. They admitted it. They were tried, saying they had liberated George Blake from Pentonville, and they were acquitted by a jury. A jury has a right to do that. We gasp a lot at trials. I mean, I would say from rape trials, where you think, how could this person have been found not guilty? Well, it's up to a jury, and often, a jury is in this case making quite a moral statement that however much the ColstonFour said they'd done it, the jury are saying, yeah, it's not a crime. It shouldn't be a crime. I mean, through our history, we've had juries doing stuff where they've gone, this isn't okay to actually try someone in this circumstance. But I think whatever you think, it's wrong for the Attorney General to kind of undermine the role of the jury in the British justice system like this. Normally, I think you get a rather passive-aggressive judge in a case like this, and that's when they say this jury should never, ever sit on a trial again, if they've been a bit rubbish like that, they think that. So that's what I think.
Okay, and Steve, do you have anything to add to this before I go into my rant?
I'll let you go into your rant. I mean, I think we broadly agree. I think.
Yeah.
I have some questions. I have some questions myself. That. Yeah. But, I mean, what about the points that? Well, Sajeela, let's. I mean, Steve, say how are you feeling, then Sajeela, if you want to sort of.
All right. Only because it's around racism, slavery, and okay. So this is what gets my go. It's on the one hand, you think that the jury was wrong to make the decision that this is our way of doing things, right? So we have 12 people who make a decision, that has been the law, and then basically the Tory party have been committing like basically making rules and then breaking those rules. That's okay. No one's looking into that. But we are looking into 4 people who did something. They were tried. They've got the sentence that the 12 people have said, which is like they've acquitted them. And now because you didn't like it, you want to change the rules, and yet you don't adhere to your own rules. So there was a kind of like hypocrisy there. And if we start here, if we cannot have like that, I mean, you can, like, and Charmian's right. I think kind of, I was trying to think of cases which have been badly judged. And I'm thinking even the last woman who was executed, she was given a death sentence, which on hindsight, you can't change. You can't, fix that. But that was a decision that was made, and it's fixed and it's gone. Do I think what they did was wrong? They probably could have handled it differently. I don't know. But it wasn't done with malicious intent. It was done with because what this person represented was awful. And it was at a time where, things were heated. And during lockdown, people have acted a little bit crazy, like having parties at Christmas, but that's kind of where I'm staying, where I think the jury, they made their decision, leave it, end of. Why are you stoking this up again?
Steve, I cut you off there. Didn't mean to cut you off. What were you going to say, having heard Sir Julia as well, of course?
No, and I largely agree. I think there are just some moments in history that transcend the cultural moments that transcend maybe traditional law. And I think this is one of those moments. It captured a moment. It connected with a lot of people. Obviously, it was connected to the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think the jury that's why they've acquitted them, because it wasn't the message they were sending was way more important than the crime they committed. And I think to try and undermine the rule of law and the jury system is very naive of our Attorney General.
I just find it sort of, I don't know, I'm not sure whether it could have been handled in a way that was different, because it's not exactly the kind of thing that I would have expected to go up against a jury necessarily, because if it's just a fairly open and shut case of criminal damage, then you issue a fine of whatever level you decide is appropriate to whatever it is. And obviously if you issue a low fine, then you're basically sending out a similar message, really. Because I mean, if I vandalised one of the tube signs that I don't like on the London Underground, like the retail therapy one at Bond Street, or the one at Piccadilly Circus that obscures whatever the station name is, they annoy me, and I vandalised that, I would expect to get a fine, and I would not expect it to be subject to a sort of a jury trial, or have, I don't know when the legal side of this. I don't know the story well enough to know when and how they were hired. Were they hired presumably because they had a case that they knew would play well in the court of public opinion? But the jury aren't there to serve the court of public opinion. They're there to serve, on the face of it, quite a sort of a factual sort of damage. I mean, it was damage caused. It was caused. It was shown on camera, and they admitted that they'd done it. And I know it's bigger than that. Of course, it's bigger than that. And I wouldn't have. I don't think it would have been I'm just struggling to see where the law and the legal sort of procedure meets in terms of what's expected of it, and what it's actually looking at is going to deal with something that looks like it's been manoeuvred by. I mean, a trial, I suppose, is all about public opinion, because it's literally 12 members of the public. But I mean, to even get to that stage, I just think it could have been a fine, like a small fine, and that would have sent out a message saying, well, you know what, in the scheme of things, this really wasn't a serious crime. I mean, I know that Marvin Rees, the mayor, is not particularly happy with some of the things they've said about the council and how slow they were to act in removing the statue, but they think it was 4 years or something it took before they've been lobbying the council for 4 years to remove it. And so there is some blame with the council, but equally even Marvin Rees is saying, even just to get this one last thing, even Marvin Rees is saying, this trial was important for the people involved in it in terms of how it might affect their lives, but actually in the scheme of things, when it comes to equality and all the rest of it, he doesn't think it's that significant. Now, he may be wrong, but that's Bristol's first black mayor talking.
Julian, did they not? They must have pleaded at some point not guilty to have had a trial by jury. Otherwise, it would have gone to a magistrate's court. If they so they admitted it, but I'm assuming they also pleaded not guilty to the charge. Did they have some kind of? They were not guilty to the crime, but they admitted they did it. I mean, they wouldn't have presumably gone before a jury and had a trial if they'd have said they were guilty.
Well, I mean, I'm not entirely sure. I thought I'd read that they had admitted culpability for it, but I mean, the legal insight is...
Yeah.
Well, I think they probably didn't think it was a crime, so they probably said, yeah, we did it, but we didn't think it was a crime. Yeah. I mean, it kind of reminds me of a little bit of, do you remember when Saddam Hussein was toppled and they pulled down that huge, like, statue of him, but that's not happening every day. You know, that didn't set a precedent for them to keep toppling down. You know, that was a moment in time. And I think I agree with Steve. There was a moment in time, and you know, that moment, that is how people reacted. It wasn't with criminal intent. It was the rage of what was happening globally, has been happening, and 4 people decided to do this thing, help the council out, you know, because the council didn't do the job and they chucked it in the river. So, you know, I think it's a win-win. Surely, come on, it's not like.
I don't think they did it to help the council out. I don't
see this happening on a daily basis.
No.
Sorry?
I don't know that they did it to help the council out, like they just, you know,
I was jesting. I was jesting. Was it like I said in tongue in cheek? You know, it's like.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's fine.
Yeah, it's just I mean, I can see what they're trying to. Attorney General's trying to say, well, you know, we don't want this to be happening all the time. It just, you know, we can't just let this happen. You can't retrial them, but they can set maybe boundaries of, like, you know, this is if you're destroying with statues, but that's not to do with this case. You have to put that separately. And it's an interesting to hear your views, guys. If anybody else has anything to say on this.
Well, I
have been trying to work this out. I have to say, I've been struggling with this. Or, like, you know, I'm trying to sort of see, like, the balance in that. And
do you think the jury are saying, yeah, they did it, but they were justified in doing it? And there must have been juries that have let people off for crimes in the past that we now would not think of as crimes, but within the context of the time were. And that leads to a change in the law. I'm not a law about vandalism, not a law about, you know, that it's okay to be a vandal. I think the jury were acknowledging that this was a special situation, and that the ColstonFour were justified in what they were doing and should not be punished for it.
You're absolutely right, Charmian, because obviously, you know, Priti Patel recently has basically made it sure, and quite rightly, that anyone that was done for, you know, what was seen as a crime for being gay is now having that taken off their record. Quite right. I can't believe it's taken this long to get to that point. So there were things that people were prosecuted for things that now we look at and think, really? Was that, you know, how was that ever a crime? Yeah. So, yeah, I kind of agree with your point there.
Well, now, Steve has picked a really big story as well. I mean, there's so much going on last week that even the Colston... I can't remember what was going on when the Colston verdict was announced, but there were so many other things going on as well. But the MollyMae story was certainly quite big on Twitter and the tabloids. Right, Steve, shall we start with... how many are there? There's a couple on here, actually, aren't there? There's quite a few, actually.
Well, you can sort of group them. I mean, basically, MollyMae... If you go down to...
Shall I read them in any particular order, or do you...
you start with the one, but Amy. Yeah. Start on that one.
Okay, so do you want to read them, or shall I?
No, you read them. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the story, though. I don't know how much people follow MollyMae.
I think it's been quite big on Twitter, so I think it's actually got quite a lot of traction. So I think that... Yeah. So the first tweet is...
Say, just before we start, I was a fan of MollyMae before she blew up and became controversial on Twitter. I've been there from the beginning.
It's going to be really interesting to have your perspective on it. Excellent, excellent stuff. That's good stuff. So the first one, let's rattle through these to cover it very nicely. Amy tweets, she's @_Amy Connolly with 2 E's, 2 L's. If I was MollyMae's PR team, I'd be pushing the idea of doing, I think I may have girl bossed a bit too close to the sun, TikTok. Lift the mood a little. So yeah, just to put context that the maybe we should have done it slightly reversed, but she basically made a comment of, if you want to be successful wherever you come from, it's all about, it's all about hard work, and she kind of had that kind of slightly sort of the Thatcherite ethos of like you can make it big, whatever background you've come from. She came in for a lot of flack.
The clip that has kind of gone viral is she said everyone's got 24 hours in a day, which comes from a very famous Instagram meme, which is the Beyonce thing. Beyonce has the same number of hours in a day as you, which is obviously a tongue-in-cheek way of saying, look how successful Beyonce is and look how unsuccessful you are. MollyMae said that in a kind of fairly serious way on a podcast, and she worded it in a way that maybe wasn't the best, wasn't the most articulate way of making the point, but it has been massively blown up to make her look like she is some sort of Thatcherite, careerist, ruthless, privileged influencer, which I think she's been slightly harshly done by.
Yeah, no, totally. Good, very important context there. Thank you. I mean, it's interesting. Didn't one of the Spice Girls sort of say that Margaret Thatcher was the first Spice Girl in the 90s, and didn't cop as much flack? But then we had Tony Blair in as Prime Minister then, so maybe that was why. I don't know. So we've got Amy here saying, advising her on a sort of PR strategy, and then Aaron. So at Aaron McIndoe 14. I wish the UK would turn on its government the way it has on MollyMae, so thus reflecting the ire that was put in her direction, which was pretty harsh. So Harry Pillane, it's at Harry Pillane, he said, "Oh my God, MollyMae, I can't wait for the new series, to be honest, which is 24 Hours in MollyMae." Nice play on 24 Hours in A&E. And then the podcast host here, that's actually slightly different, I think. But Steve.
Yeah, I mean the podcast that she said it on was the Stephen Bartlett podcast, which is a kind of I forget what it's called, but basically successful people go on there and talk about why they're successful. That's what the podcast is, which I think is really important context for why she was saying what she was saying. But the podcast is about why are you successful. So in that context, her saying what she said isn't quite as bad. And I just feel like I don't agree with what MollyMae said. Like, I don't agree that everyone has the same opportunity to become as successful as MollyMae, because obviously our backgrounds define the starting point that we go from. And MollyMae did happen to come from a reasonably privileged background, and she does seem to be slightly oblivious to that in this particular clip. Now, obviously, if you were to sit down with MollyMae, she might be really self-aware about that privilege. Who knows? But in this clip, she does appear oblivious to it. And I understand that is, I don't agree with that personally. However, the vitriol and backlash she has received based on it is just so disproportionate and so nasty that it's everything I hate about Twitter, because she hasn't said anything that is like evil. She has said something that maybe is slightly misjudged and maybe requires some debate, but it does not make her Hitler. I mean, like, that's the way she's been portrayed, as if she's suddenly the most evil person, right-wing, kind of unsympathetic human being. And ultimately, she's just someone who said something, and it maybe has been taken out of context. Maybe it hasn't, but either way, we don't really know. And also, even if she does have quite Thatcherite views about individualism and how you can progress in the world, and maybe the idea that maybe she does believe that if you work hard, that's all you need to succeed. Maybe she does believe that, and actually, so do a lot of people in the world believe that. I personally think it's a lot more nuanced, but that doesn't make her evil. That makes her agree with probably like majority of the UK. So Twitter is sometimes in this little bubble that thinks everyone agrees with the sort of metropolitan liberal elite arguments. And actually, I don't think she said anything that, I don't agree with it, but I think the vitriol has been really unfair. And I think if a man said it And men have said it on that exact podcast. And this is the point that Stephen Bartlett said. Lots of men have gone on that podcast and said very similar things. And they've not received anywhere near the backlash. But because she's a successful young female, I think she's attracted a lot more hate.
Let me just quickly read those tweets so that we can get those tweets in. So Stephen Bartlett, who's the host of the podcast, as you said, MollyMae did an interview on my podcast yesterday. A soundbite from that interview went viral. She trended #1 on Twitter. Every newspaper covered it, and MPs weighed in. I've had male guests say what she said. No one cared, but when Molly says it, she's crucified. Crazy. And then he's just followed it up here. Social media is full of people that can. Well, I say followed it up. He's previously said social media is full of people that can spot toxic behaviour in everyone but themselves. The world doesn't need more critics; it needs more self-awareness.
But we have spoken about how females get it harder online than guys anyway before on this show. Specifically, we're referring to comedians. But I wonder, like, if it was also the fact it was referencing Thatcher, because we've one of our previous guests, Louisa Emelian, a great comedian. She, this is also if you haven't lived through Thatcher, looking at her historically, she's a woman who did well. So it's easy to see her as some kind of role model. But she'd announced on social media, Louisa, that she really admired Margaret Thatcher, and then she said, "I can't believe how people are being so awful. Why?" And then having to explain, because if you haven't lived through it, you don't necessarily know how bad we thought of Margaret Thatcher growing up through that era. So I wonder if it's partly the fact that she's successful in her own right, but from a kind of looked down upon because she's from a reality show. She's a woman, and she's referencing someone highly unpopular with a lot of the left, I suppose. With Thatcher.
But also, to be clear, like MollyMae didn't mention Margaret Thatcher. Like, MollyMae does. I don't think she cares who Margaret Thatcher is. She just said a point of view that was
my correction, because I didn't see.
No, it's okay.
She said, yeah.
No, yeah. All she did was say a point of view that would be considered Thatcherite.
Yeah.
I don't think MollyMae is. I don't know how in tune she is with political history, but that, and she got sort of lampooned because it was a Thatcherite view, and I just find that tough, because a lot of people agree with Margaret Thatcher, and I don't think it's necessarily evil. I don't, and there's a debate to be had, but I don't think it makes MollyMae evil to have said that.
Just before I let Charmian in, just to say, it's not just that is interesting, of course, because it was such a Thatcherite statement. So therefore, it just sort of ballooned into, she loves Thatcher, does she? And then you was thinking, because the age that she is, she's not going to bring Thatcher as a term of reference. But it could have been, somebody could have said, well, I can't believe she just said exactly what Alan Sugar thinks, because Alan Sugar absolutely thinks that, a Labour peer, or he was. And I don't know if he still is, actually. I can't remember if he's still a Labour peer. But it could have been Michael Caine. It could have been like X number of old school. And again, like they're guys, they wouldn't have got it in the neck for necessarily saying it. Although I do, it could have been Sporty Spice or whoever said it.
Also, because MollyMae sort of articulated a kind of individualistic view on society, which, yes, is Thatcherite, doesn't necessarily mean she also thinks that we should close down all the mines and sell off all the council houses and not replace them. Like, it doesn't mean she suddenly agrees with every single thing that Margaret Thatcher did. She just prescribes to a particular view on success, and I just think it's what Twitter, it just lacks all nuance, and has blown this poor. She's only 23 or something. Like, it's completely blown out of proportion. And I think it's because she's a successful young woman who's a multi-millionaire, and she has largely done it off working very hard. And Love Island gave her a boost, but she also is way more successful than most people who have come off Love Island, and that's because she works a lot harder than those people.
Also, maybe it's just downright jealousy, which is what kind of Twitter is also, a cesspool of people who are just jealous of other people's success. And if they hear one thing said out of context, it's easy then to express their, whether it's classist, racist. I'm sure we've all been the victim of that on social media ourselves, like things taken out of context.
And also Molly said some other stuff in that interview that has been completely ignored, and she said some really interesting, inspirational stuff about how she's faced a lot of obstacles in her career, and she's overcome it and worked really hard, and that's been completely ignored. And the thing that's been taken away is this one little 5-second comment that she made that maybe was slightly misjudged. And I find it frustrating, because I don't think she's a bad person. I think wonky. You could take anything out of context and make anyone look bad.
Thanks,
Please
Steve.
don't do it to me, though.
Charmian, did you have anything to? Do you know about this story? Because I had to just quickly Google and remind myself.
I saw a bit of it. I was going to agree with Julian that this is something celebrated in Dragon's Den and The Apprenticeship, and also I think it's out of context. It was a bit misjudged, but also isn't that quite a humble thing to say, because she's saying she hasn't really got anything special except attitude. I mean, I don't think that's accurate what she says, but that it's true, anybody can use their 24 hours or anything like that. But she is kind of almost saying, that's all I got. I've just got life, and I make the best of it, which is not very arrogant. It's kind of the opposite, isn't it? So
but ultimately it's her opinion, isn't it? That's it.
It is just her opinion.
People don't seem to just don't happen to agree with. That's it.
Well, some people don't agree with it.
Twitter boils down to is like, people just have a pile on just because they have a differing opinion, irrespective of whether it's MollyMae or anyone else.
And I remember when when she said the thing about Thatcher, because she didn't know that there'd ever been a British female prime minister, and she was like, oh my God, I've just discovered that there is one. And she, as you say, she was completely hounded about that.
I think the other thing that's been sort of ignored is Tommy Fury, who is MollyMae's partner, who's also Tyson Fury's cousin, is a boxer. And earlier this year, he was offered a fight with a big YouTuber, a boxing fight, for £1 million. And he was quoted as saying, I wouldn't get out of bed for £1 million. And the context of that was he was worth a lot more money than £1 million, right? That's quite an arrogant thing to say. He didn't get anywhere near the flak for saying that, which is exactly the same sort of message as what MollyMae is saying. But because he's a sort of alpha male boxer, he didn't get the kind of attention, whereas MollyMae is a young female influencer, and suddenly she's not allowed to be successful and ambitious, whereas Tommy Fury, when he says it, it's kind of fine. And I just find it just sort of stinks of hypocrisy
and gender wars there as well. From there, Julian, I was just wondering if we can go to, because we're talking about critiques, especially with women online, if we oh gosh, what's her name? The supermodel of the 80s.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the story, so I need a bit of educating here. Let's have a go.
Supermodel of the 80s. I don't know if Charmian might have seen this. I'm just kind of it's kind of really about getting older. So she's basically said, I'm completely invisible. What's her first name? I can't remember her first name now. But she was in the video for Cars, Who's Going to Drive Me Home.
Paulina Porizkova.
Paulina Porizkova, yeah. And she said, I walk into a party, I try to flirt with guys, and they just walk away from me to pursue someone 20 years younger. I'm very single, I'm dressed up, I've made an effort, and I get nothing. Now, I kind of, on the surface, sort of think, yeah, I totally get it. Like, you get an older, Charmian, I'm sure you're with me on this one, and you become invisible. However, not if you're Paulina. I mean, she looks amazing. She looks fantastic. I think she's about 50. How is anybody ignoring her if she doesn't have a chance to kind of like, if she thinks she feels invisible, us mere mortals, Charmian, how are we supposed to compete? So that was supposed to be just a little bit more sort of have a little more sort of a cleansing palette from what we just talked about. But I'm not having a go because I think she's amazing and looks incredible, but not all of us can look like that. Is that right, Charmian?
She's going to the wrong parties. I mean, she's going to the wrong parties. I mean, she's gorgeous, so she should be going to parties surrounded by, people of her own age. And I'm assuming. Oh, well, she's saying that.
No, they're going for 20 years younger because.
Well, she's going to parties full of the kind of people who pursue women 20 years younger.
Age
That's
inappropriate.
definitely
Yeah.
the wrong kind of party, and she needs.
Yeah, the solution there. Is
more
don't go to
intelligent
parties.
people.
Don't go
Yeah.
to parties with the people 20 years younger than you. That's the
Go
solution.
Yeah.
with the parties where the younger men will go for her. Are you saying
Yeah,
that, Steve?
absolutely. Actually, absolutely.
Because she shouldn't be with men her own age. Because let's face it, we know it. Men your own age, they do always go for 20 years younger. So men like you, Steve, younger men, is that what you're saying? Right around till your mate's party, and she'll be like, you know, hot as.
If she wants to come to my house party in Tooting Broadway, she can come.
Introduce her to some nice friends. Make her feel
Yeah,
beautiful.
lots of nice friends. I'm sure she can, if she's happy to do some Jaeger bombs and stuff. I'm sure it'll be fine.
And there we have it. It's the older women should be dating younger men.
Yeah.
I mean, she's in her 50s. She's still going to parties. I mean, that's quite impressive, actually. I mean,
Yeah.
You know,
So I've got no energy.
She should be going to bridge.
you should surely just be putting.
Have to meet a guy.
She should just be loading up those photos to Tinder and then just sort of rocking it on Tinder. Then I don't know, because I'm just going to happen.
Dog.
Also, what is that stick she's holding? Is that to show her? Is it a walking stick? What is it? What's the black thing? Or is that like a sexy sort of thing? I was thinking, is it she's old now? She's got because it's in one photo but not the other photo.
Something the photographer told us to do, probably. I don't know. Or something had lying around the studio.
I mean, she does look incredible. She was beautiful back in the day, and she still is. And you know, there is obviously pressure for women to look great as they get older. And as yourself, Julian, said, TV is very unforgiving, brutally unforgiving. But I mean, you're right. I think just if you look like that, it's easier getting older than it is if you look like me. So, or I won't speak for you, Charmian, because I know that you are beach ready as always. If we have these discussions before. Yeah. No pressure on the men though to get older.
What do you mean, no pressure on us to
I'm
get
asking
older?
you.
We're definitely getting older.
Yeah, but do you feel the same? You know, it's not, society doesn't judge you guys in the same way.
Well, look, I don't know if you can even ask Steve that yet. How old are you, Steve?
I'm 31. I feel absolutely past it.
Yeah.
Well, you've got years of feeling past it to come, but before you are actually past it.
No, it's been tough. Turning 30 was a real eye opener. You know, like things have changed. People look at me in different ways. When I go to parties now, people don't go near me, but they didn't go near me when I was 20 either. So nothing really changed.
Yeah,
I think
since I've been pretty consistent there too.
Yeah.
I think 35 is probably the optimum for men to kind of mature, and then they sort of slump probably after the 40s.
Wow.
Yeah, so you still got time.
Do we? That's not what it says on my dating profile. I'm not going to change it tonight to I've hit the slump. I've reinvented. You know, I'm saying that it's like Renaissance. I've finally hit the Renaissance period.
Well, I'm sorry, Julian, to tell you, I'm still on the up.
Yeah, well, I should hope so. I mean, blooming heck. Right, so listen, we've got a few. There's a few zingers here. So Charmian's got a couple of zinger tweets. Very importantly, one very dear to her heart, which will be up here, is where it is placed. It's the Mirror story. Yes, it's the Mirror story about comedians to be prescribed on the NHS to help patients struggling with trauma. Got a lot of pushback from other comedians. So this is your time to reveal all.
Okay. Well, this is. Should I talk about the response first? The response has been like.
Tell us what it is first.
Oh, I'll tell you what it is then. So it's been developed by somebody called Angie Belcher, who is a comedian in Bristol, but also she has a psychology background. She's doing a PhD, and she's done lots of work in the community. And she has been asked, she also does teaching, to develop a series of participatory events where people who've had trauma, PTSD, who've already had therapy, joining these workshops, which use the techniques that we use to write and construct comedy routines, to kind of get stuff out of the system, or at least to have some kind of control over their own story so that they become the narrator of their own story. In the same way that they might have been sent off to like a pottery workshop or a dance therapy or arts therapy workshop. And it's a pilot scheme. So there's also an arts therapist working with it. I'm a comedian who's working with it, been asked to work with her as an assistant. and it will be evaluated in a monetary way to see whether it's worth doing, whether it has any effect, and that's it. Angie's fantastic at her PR. She sent out a press release. At least the Mirror don't have a paywall, so people could read the article. But the response to this headline has been, wow, so you mean to say that people who have no arms and legs coming back from Afghanistan, the war, they're going to be dumped in the front row of Michael McIntyre and made to listen to him. So it's people make a lot of assumptions without reading the actual article. But that's what it is. I think it could be really interesting. I've done a training, a training day. That's all. I'm being let loose about what we're going to do. And I mean, I teach comedy at City Academy sometimes, and that's getting people up to perform. This is much more structured so that they can use ideas of archetypes and, personas and stuff. It's just a tool. And I think, considering most comedians are doing comedy as a form of self-medication, I think it's got a lot of potential, but we'll see what happens.
I'm with you 100% there, Charmian. And having done something, I know John Ryan does a lot of comedy workshops for mental health for men, which, have gone down very well. And I've done similar things, workshops around migrant experiences, and I'm a very big fan of owning your own narrative. And so I think I can see where this is coming from. I can see what benefits it might give. And so who books the gig, Charmian?
Well, it's a little kind of pilot happening in a community in Bristol, in Lawrence Hill, and Angie Belcher is, she's did 6 sessions. That's all, 6 sessions to start with, which will be, they'll see what happens. I mean, a few years ago, I did a comedy pilot where we went to the north of England and perform comedy at 11 in the morning to people suffering from arthritis, to kind of ingrain them with the idea that specialized exercise will help them. So you'd be going, hi, joke, and then, oh, I'm doing some movement. And that was evaluated, and people didn't fill in the forms properly. So it didn't become a nationwide thing, but it's just a really good way of communicating comedy, I think.
Did they not fill the forms in properly because they had a bit of arthritis in their hands?
Yeah, probably.
Because that's when my line flares up, is in the morning. And what about you, Steve? Are you a fan of this? I mean,
I think it's a fantastic idea. And if it helps people, then that's great. My concern is if it gets more people doing stand-up comedy, I don't want the competition.
Agreed.
If they've got some great stories, that sounds like they've got some good Edinburgh shows in them. I don't want that. There's enough people with really good traumatic stories in Edinburgh shows. That worries me. They're going to be they'll be smashing the Pleasance, they'll be getting 4 stars in Guardian and Short. I don't want that. I don't need that. So I would shut this pilot down immediately.
I can't put them off, Steve.
Just tell them only to do the workshops, Charmian, and tell them they're not to go. Yeah. Don't take it up as a career at all.
I'll say it where it will traumatize them.
If they start doing 10s at the Comedy Store, we can shut it down.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. I wish you all the best of luck with it, Charmian.
Yeah. Sorry?
We wish you all the best of luck with it.
Thank you very much. It's exciting.
Where can people find out more information? We'll take it off you at the end of the show.
We're paid much less, much less than a therapist. So all good for the NHS.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And probably NHS staff would benefit themselves, really, because I'm hearing. No, because I generally am hearing that that there's a lot of mental health issues going around with the staff as well, because they've had to deal with a lot of vicarious trauma from patients that they've been treating the last couple of years. So I think it'd be great. In fact, I've even been asked to do in the past over the lockdown a little something for the staff, which I thought was great, but never sort of led to anything. So what have we got? Anything? Any news from you, Julian, about this? What do you think?
I noticed there was a bit of cynicism online. Some of the comedians had reacted to this quite cynically. Like prescribing Mrs. Brown's Boys to someone who's just, which is obviously can be a serious trauma to watch. at the best of times. But I mean, I'm really interested. Like, there's been a lot of health initiatives using comedy. Like, they've done a lot of Leicester Comedy Festival over the years. John Ryan's been involved in all that and all the rest of it. And yeah, so they do seem to go together. They do seem to have a role to play. And I think essentially here what's happening is that people who've been through trauma need to tell a story, and this is just giving them a way to tell that story. And comedy sort of technique can be quite a very effective way of telling a story and sort of slaying a few demons in the process, hopefully. So yeah.
Agreed. So from that note, what have we got
Right,
to go from trauma to?
We've got two. So there's two lovely sort of visual gags really that Steve's picked out, which we'll leave to the end. We'll just do one, and we'll just about, I think, got time for one more serious story. It's quite a curious story. Charmian's picked the tweet. It's an article by JennyEclair in the Guardian, in the Indie, on Indie Voices, behind a paywall, I think. No one's had a chance to read it, but Jenny is now not on Twitter, I discovered by looking at this. When you go to her account, she's obviously had health concerns recently, which she has mentioned on Twitter, and she wrote this article which has got this headline, which I mean, I think the article is literally about. From what I've seen of it, it's about like the worry of like you're testing every day and you're not getting the symptoms that you think you've got, and I've been there as well. So I've felt under the weather and thinking it feels like it could be, because you're told about what this is a cold, this is not a cold. It's quite hard to sort of negotiate. But it's the tyranny of the headline. If you write, and anyone who writes an article, including journalists themselves, you do not pick the headline. You get the headline imposed upon you, and this has caused a backlash on Twitter, hasn't it, Charmian?
I think it has. I think she wrote an article about her health anxiety, and you can't read the article, as you say, it's behind a paywall. They've done this incredibly clickbait title headline, and she's had a spinal operation recently, Jenny. I think that it's just terrible for the Independent to do that to someone. They must know what they're doing. They're not the Sun, they're not the Mirror. Why did they do that and attract all this vitriol that she doesn't deserve? Why did they do that? Why?
Well, it is clickbait. I mean, it is journalism, it is clickbait, and they will use the catchiest headline in there. And I don't know how it's been extrapolated from what Jenny's written, but I mean, I've certainly been in cases where comedians have written comment pieces for various organisations, and it comes out with like, a headline which you might be lucky to sort of negotiate it back if it is absolutely unrepresentative or it's taken something out of context. Then you have some recourse, but it can be quite difficult. So I have a lot of sympathy, and I'm quite concerned.
I've got a lot of sympathy.
Really.
Again, it's clickbait. It's that's Twitter. That is Twitter's lot of bread and butter on Twitter, isn't it? Just to kind of retweet everything and just get caught up in the byline of that's it. Oh well, I've got a touch of Omicron, and then everyone's just going to comment and not actually read the article. And I actually do have a lot of sympathy with that. Have you ever been a victim of a clickbait yourself? Like, have you been kind of misquoted on social media?
I haven't. I'm invisible on social media.
I know you always tell me this.
Words of genius get. No, I haven't got that kind of engagement. I mean, I'm on Twitter, but even being mentioned in that Mirror article, I wasn't the one that got trolled. So maybe I've got a wall of invisibility in a really good way.
Steve, what about you? What about any brushes with the press from you?
Well, I recently did a tweet, which was largely a joke about watching a lady on the. I can't.
Yes, we featured it. I can't remember whose choice it was. In fact, I've put it.
No, it was. I think I included it, but I can't remember.
You did. It's here, and I had to put it in the drafts because I've already liked it. So I unliked it and liked it again, but I couldn't actually. Anyway, here it is. It's on screen now.
Yeah. Yes, I remember this.
I did this tweet, and it went a bit crazy. And it was largely true. There was someone with a lateral flow in front of me on the central line, and that happened. it got blown up. But the reason it got blown up and became huge was because people started debating how disgusting London was, and it became this like thing of like it represented how horrible London was. Like I was sort of like, well, it's largely just a joke. Like it was just one lady who clearly didn't think she was symptomatic and was just doing it to get into a building or something. And I really didn't think much of it. Anyway, sorry, the reason I mentioned it was on the news is because it got articles were written about this tweet. Like it was in newspaper articles were written as if it was like a factual kind of event. And I guess it was, but like I very much wrote it as, look how silly this thing is. But it was reported as like, woman does a test on the central line. How horrendous is this? And I was like, oh no, it's just a silly joke.
But the skill she must have had to balance it. I think that's what we said when we were on the show, and I wish I could remember who it was. I don't know who it was when we had Josh.
I can't remember,
Paul.
but I do know that we treated it like that was a disgusting thing to do.
Well, I don't know. Did we? I just thought it was like a really skillful thing to do. But
it was quite impressive. I think everyone on the carriage was quite excited about the jeopardy that was going on.
Did she tell you the result?
Yeah, she did.
Did she?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Did she tweet it at you? Or no?
No, she sort of held it up. She was sort of like, it's negative, guys, it's negative. But that was after a few minutes. So
You sure it wasn't a pregnancy test?
Ah,
That was a different
Because
carriage.
that would have been very
the
tense, wouldn't
nasal one.
It was
A nasal one,
honestly,
yeah. What?
genuinely what happened. The sad thing about this tweet is that I did it and I thought, well, this is quite funny. I'll tweet it while I was on the tube. And you only get signal in the stations, right? So I tweeted it and when I got signal, right? And then as I got to another, in between the next station, I thought of a funnier way to tweet that same joke. So I rewrote it, tweeted it again, but didn't have time to delete that one. And then I went to the next station, went to check it to delete that one, and found it had blown up in the minute between the stations. And I was like, oh my God, I've now tweeted it twice. So then I had to delete the original one. It was really stressful. Anyway, I missed my stop by about 3 stops because I was busy trying to get the Wi-Fi signal to delete this tweet. It was awful. I nearly deleted it. I was minutes away from deleting the one that went viral.
That's hilarious that this tweet has got so many stories. It's going to be, what were you doing at that moment, that tweet? You read that tweet. You know, what was happening? Did you read the second one? You could have a whole sitcom or at least a one-off serialized thing of your story here.
The thing that does frustrate me is that the real joke is the reply, the update. It's like that's like a joke, but no one cares about that. That didn't do as well.
Yeah, can only accept your first answer on that one, or as it
I
were.
know.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant stuff. Now you've just to finish off before we ask you guys what you're up to in the near future. You picked 2 sort of all visual gags essentially, really, which was this one here from Professor Colin Talbot.
Oh, yeah.
Colin R. Talbot. Daughter's just sent me this. Not sure who is responsible, but well done. And it's the what do you call those?
Yeah, the robot checkers.
Robot checkers of the Downing Street. This was the one in with May, was it? The garden.
Yeah, this was the wine.
The wine and cheese.
In the garden.
Cheese. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I just thought this was very funny. What a funny idea. And also those robot checker things are mad. Like I don't really understand how a robot can't work out which ones are a tractor and which ones aren't a tractor, or whatever the test is.
CAPTCHA. Yeah. That's CAPTCHA.
CAPTCHA, Martin. Thank you, Martin.
CAPTCHA. Yeah, that's
I'm a
it.
super fan.
But yeah, I thought this is very funny. And it's just a nice. This is what I think's good about Twitter. Yeah. This is an example of Twitter being great.
It's a fun aspect, the fun bits.
It's a fun one. And then the other one was, this is quite sweet actually, from Odds Bible. Newcastle fans will be hoping that Kieran Trippier can pick out a man better than he can pick out the badge this season. And it's a photo of Kieran pointing to his sort of the logo. Actually, he's presumably supposed to be pointing to the Newcastle logo rather than the advertising logo. It just feels like one of those things where he's probably had like 100 photos taken, and he's you know.
But you know this, Julian, that would have gone through like what 10 PR people to get that onto that page. How on earth has that one been picked? The one where he covers up the badge. It's absolutely crazy.
Unless the sponsor's seen it and gone, brilliant, it's pointing at the sponsor. It is very strange. It's like, absolutely, there'd be so many versions of this that why would that one get through? It's a lovely epic fail for us all to to share. So listen, thank you so much. That's our last tweet this evening. We have managed to get through them all, I think, and some very, very involved subjects as well that we've managed to. I mean, I'm amazed. We've got the world's MollyMae expert with us. I mean, I wish I'd known. I'd have trailed you like that earlier. But guys,
I'd like to be known, actually, from now on.
What's that?
That is how I'd like to be known.
Absolutely, totally. I think you might have an Edinburgh show sorted there. She says something else. And speaking of all things performing, what are you guys up to? What are you doing in the near future, whether it's on stage or otherwise? Charmian.
I've got a few Southwest London gigs coming up. I think I've got one in London Bridge on the 16th of January, all that kind of thing. I'm doing the National Health thing that somebody very funnily has said is the National Hoot Service. And also I'm redeveloping my latest solo show, which I was took to New Zealand where I got trapped with it. And so it hasn't been to Edinburgh yet, and I'm working on that, and we'll be taking that to Cambridge and stuff like that. And it's called She Immortal Horror Queen's Guide to Life.
Is there a song called She? Maybe
there is a song called She, and a film with Ursula Andress called She as well.
And Steve?
I am on tour. I'm doing a national tour in May, June, July, and all the dates are on my website, stevebugeja.com. You can get the tickets there.
Yeah, that's true. And obviously, handles-wise, Charmian is at Charmian Hughes, and Steve is at Steve Bugeja. Your Twitter handles have been scrolling above us on our ticker that we have as well, so you're covered. You're covered there. Sajila, your cottage has got a gig. Has it not?
Yes, it is coming back in the new year, the 28th, Friday the 28th. It's with Patrick Monahan, ever popular Patrick Monahan, a whole load of other acts I can't remember, but it's on the 28th. We're probably going to sell out, hopefully we will. So please book your tickets now. And I shall be back on a certain TV channel on Tuesday evening doing headliners.
For those people who know what you're talking about. That's almost a plug.
But that's fine. It's only the people who tune in will know.
That's right.
You need to know basis.
Need to know basis. Very good. I have got SE1 comedy coming up on this Thursday, the 13th of January. Hopefully we've got a fantastic lineup. Tamsin Kelly, Robin Perkins and Ria Lina. And For Your Sins, I shall be hosting that gig. Also with musical comedians Harriet Brain and Cameron Blair. So please do come along to that. And of course, Julie, we need to start plugging the live outing of Let's
yes,
Kill
of course.
So we're basically going to be doing a double bill with the boys from Comics Solving Problems, who are Steve N. Allen and Eric McElroy, of course, both former guests on the show too. And we are doing a double bill with them at the esteemed Bill Murray, the Bill Murray in Islington in London. And that will be on February the 6th. The show runs from 4:30 to 6:30 because it's a double bill. And Comic Solving Problems will go first, and we will go on afterwards.
And do we have our guests?
Well, that will be you and me, Julia, obviously, with Steve and Eric joining us, and Ria Lina is going to be our guest on that. So I'm seeing a lot of Ria in the near future. But yeah, so that we're very excited about that. It will be live. It means that we won't have a session, an online session that Sunday, of course. Next Sunday, we have got Sam Baines, Samantha Baines and Michael Legg joining us. So please check us out for that. And in terms of this show, we'll be putting it out as a podcast. It will be available to watch on YouTube and Facebook as well. Please give us a subscribe. And we'll be putting out clips just as soon as they are done. So all that remains for us to do in unison, or close to unison as possible, is wave goodbye and say thank you very much for the people who've been watching us on streams. Thanks very much, guys. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.